look up on Patrick's Hill, who would you take down? Who would you take down?
OTB AM's Mount Rushmore.
Yes, we are here. It is time for the very end of the Mount Rushmore saga, and I'm delighted to say we have John Duggan and Brian Kerr with us to help us pick the final of our mountains. I'm not sure where this mountain's going to go, lads. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the selection, Brian, have you thought about where a Dublin Mount Rushmore should actually be situated?
In terms of Ireland or...
No, the physical mountain. Like, where would we actually chisel it?
Well, you're talking about in Ireland or Dublin specifically?
In Dublin. It's the Dublin one. Every county has their own.
Yeah. No, well, I understand that, but they don't all have mountains, I suppose. Some of them are quite flat. Where should it go? Well, it should go on the south side. It has to go the south side around, up around the Dublin Mountains. I mean, it has to be up there, doesn't it? But I don't have a specific spot in mind that I.
Anywhere up there would be perfect. Anywhere, so
grand, we could get to it easy,
Yeah, and so that it looks down on the north side. That's the other aspect of this as well.
Absolutely. Three Rock, Ferry Castle to Braddon. Got to be in the south side. We got the chisel here to carve Dublin's Mount Rushmore this morning. We've also got symbols of Dublin, like a can of Guinness, brewed in St James's Gate Brewery. Maybe not, but yeah, it says it is anyway. And like after the chiselling that Brian and I and everybody that's helped this week, Stephen Doyle, Philip Egan, Sean Potts, Kenny Cunningham, we will know the controversial four legends that will appear on this mountain, whether it's Three Rock or wherever it is, and maybe have a drink of the blue light afterwards. And as Ger said, look down on the north side.
Brian, your sporting credentials, obviously, as a football man, are well established, but you grew up as a boxing fan in a boxing house. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, but there was plenty of interest in other sports as well. My dad's background was a boxer. He also played, interestingly enough, he played hockey for Leinster. So he was obviously fairly good at that. And I think he played soccer when he was a young lad, but boxing was his main sport. But it influenced me in one way, but I was just kind of surrounded by a lot of different sports from when I was a kid, and I followed every sport going that was covered, I'd say, in the newspapers at the time, which was the only main media when I was a kid. There was very little sport on television when television it came on the scene. So, I had a lot of interest in boxing and athletics and golf and cricket and swimming even. Anything was on. And Gaelic games, of course. I went to a lot of Gaelic games. I went to Crow Park. I played a lot. I went to Crow Park an awful lot of Sundays and lots of other game places, Parnell Park, O'Toole Park. Anywhere there was matches on, I'd go. And I wasn't too fussy about the sport. So... But football became my main sport and the one I had the biggest interest in.
Did that happen accidentally, or was there somebody along the way who you kind of latched onto and thought, this coach I like, or this group, this team that I like? Like when you were a teenager and you were deciding what you were going to spend your time on, what was the thing that actually made you fall in love with football?
I think the fact, Jared, that was the one that I found easiest to be good at. I mean, it was natural for us, as it is with most kids around the world, to play with a ball on the street. We didn't need too much equipment, and even with Gaelic football, you had to have a crossbar to decide on whether it was goals or points. Not that we needed one. Where I lived in Trimna, we could imagine where the crossbar was, depending on what size the goalkeeper was. If you can imagine that, if it was a big lad in goal, you could say, well, he should have stretched his arms and stopped the goal. But we had a great imagination. But football was a natural fit. I mean, there was plenty of football teams, local junior teams like St John Bosco, Finbars, St Stephen's. There was loads of teams around the area who played. I could go and walk up to see them play. And Rialto became one of my favourite teams. I went and played for them. But then, Pats was only, St Patrick's Athletic was only down the road. But it was, I went to see a lot of Gaelic football in Horlin as a young fella, because in school we weren't allowed to play soccer So I played football and hurling for the school and ran for the school, and we would have got to Crow Park as juniors, as we called under 12. We got to the final, the hurling and the football. But I would have been, I kind of had a rota of places I would go on weekends. Like Friday night would, more often than not, would be the Boxing Stadium. Saturday I'd be playing myself, but I'd be going to watch Rialto, their second team, maybe playing if I wasn't playing myself. And then Sunday it would be either Richmond Park, or it would be Crow Park, or Parnell Park, or O'Toole Park. And then I had a lot of other places I used to go as an option instead, including, as I said one time recently, people laughed. I went out to Dunleary to watch a water polo international tournament one weekend, a home countries I think it was called, but we were included in a water polo international tournament. So I would have went anywhere to watch sport, and I wasn't over fussy. I would have went to Billy Martin Stadium, as became known. It was, when I was a kid, it was Santry Stadium. So I went to a lot of events up there, athletics events too. So
Kieran Barr, actually, who we had on picking the Antrim one, was an Irish water polo international. So you're the second person in this Mount Rushmore conversation to bring it up, and I'd say that's the first time that we've ever had it mentioned on the show as well. John Duggan, what's you're the son of a Clareman.
I am Ger and Owen and Brian and Limerick mother. They came to Dublin in the 60s. So I've spent my whole life here. I'm never quite overt about my Dublin-ness, but I'm very much a proud Dub. Was born on Holles Street, Dublin 2, just off Mount Street there. And I've spent my whole life, apart from a few summers in college in London and that, I've spent my whole life in Dublin. Went to Christian Brothers School, Clonking College, had the likes of Dom Toomey, Tommy Lyons, a really good GA school, closely aligned to Kilmuckle Crokes. I grew up in Ballybrack, the birthplace of Sean O'Mass, are one of our best ever teaching. Paul Howard, myself, Adrian Kennedy, we're all from the same neck of the woods in Ballybrack in South Dublin there, and of course Fernando, the player as well. That is okay. And then I kind of studied in the city, and lucky enough to study in Trinity, and I just love the city. I love Killarney Bay, I love Dollymount, I love Howth Head, I love the bars, I love walking around this beautiful city. I love O'Connell Street, I love Grafton Street, I love Mulligan's, I love Kilmainham, I love Neary's, the Long Hall, all these great pubs you can have a chat in, and I just love walking around Dublin. I remember even meeting Brian on Christmas Eve one year, just walking down Grafton Street, and you say, "How are you, Brian?" and you just, I love inhaling the city and walking around the shops and the restaurants and just speaking to people, and it is a beautiful city. It's a great city, and it's delivered, lads, some of our greatest sporting legends in Ireland. Obviously, it's the capital. From the north side, from the south side, and it's just a place that's very dear to my heart. I love the Twin Towers. That probably my favourite symbol of Dublin are the Twin Towers, the Poolbeck Stacks, and it's somewhere I'm just once again not overtly. I'm probably more of a Clare head in my public persona with the Clare Hurlers, but I do have a huge core for the Dublin footballers and the soccer team.
Okay, so we've established the credentials of our selectors 100%. The way this is going to work is John gets to pick his four and Brian gets to fix it. That's the kind of the way that it's worked so far. Brian, if we'd asked you just for your four, with no kind of rules or regulations or guidance, in terms of your own sporting life and sporting heroes, if you were asked to put four people on a sports Mount Rushmore for Dublin, who would they be?
Well, I mean, I'd be slightly older vintage than John, and I just like to comment on some of the stuff he said there in relation to the various hostelries around Dublin. They sound great. I wish I had gone to more of them, and I intend to in the future, John. I know a few of them all right, but I think you've had a bit more time around town when I was traipsing
Brian, you were
around.
too busy managing Ireland, things like that,
I've gone to Daily Mount and Tulka and various grounds, some little town in the... Anyway, straight off, I would go with... There was four Dublin sports people that I would consider as heroes and should be on Mount Rushmore. And I'd have to say that these are kind of going back a little bit. I would imagine John would go for a more recent vintage. But I consider this based on my kind of life following sport. And I would go with Johnny Giles. I would go with Kevin Morden. I would go with Michael Cruz and Eamon Coughlin. And if you wanted me to justify any of them, John is laughing. The fact that three of them lived quite near Drimnagh might be a clue. But I think, in Eamon Coughlin's case, he was a pal of mine. We played football and so on together, and we ran together. We ran for the same athletics club for a while when I was 13. But he went on to win the first World Championship, win the 5,000 metres, the World Championships in 1983. But he was also the world record holder for the indoor mile for about 20 years with an extraordinary time under 350, 349.78. He was European indoor champion. He was silver medalist outdoors, fourth in the Olympics twice. But haven't got over that and the huge disappointment of that 76 and 80 in Moscow to go and win those first World Championships, and the joy that I felt, and I think a lot of people at that time felt, anyone that had any interest in the Olympic Games had followed Eamon's travails, I suppose, at those two Olympics. When he finally won those World Championships, it was such a big deal. And then, later on, as a 40-year-old, he ran a sub-4-minute mile. Those 7 Wanamaker miles. He was chairman of the boards in America. That went on for years. He seemed to be just winning event after event, major events in America. So for that reason, and given that I think there should be an inclusion of someone, we've had a great history in athletics. Ronnie Delaney was probably one of my first ever heroes, but he can't get into this because he's not a real dub. I think he's a Wicklow.
He is,
he's a Wicklow. But Ronnie Delaney was my first hero. Having won that, and we didn't know what it was for, but when we were sent for messages, we were always told, will you hurry up? And the phrase was, "Who do you think I am, Ronnie Delaney?" And it wasn't until the kind of early 60s I began to realise who this person was that had won the gold medal at 1,500 metres in Melbourne in 1956. But I think for that reason, and our history, and Bob Tisdale, our history in athletics, that has continued to current day, and the likes of John Tracy and his silver medal, and all for all that history we have in athletics. I think we have to have an athlete in that. I go for Eamon. Michael Cruz is an obvious one for me. If you want me to expand on the reasons, again, it's the history of boxing in Ireland. We've won 31 medals, I think, in sport at the Olympic Games. Every 4 years, everybody wants to know about the Olympic Games, what's happening, where are we going to get a medal, how are we going to get a medal. 16 of those have been in boxing. But the only gold medal we've won is Michael Cruz. And in 1992 in Barcelona, when he won, it was sensational for me personally because of the background of boxing. But he was actually representing the Drimnagh Boxing Club, which my father was involved in the founding, and the hall is called after my dad. But having seen many of the other Olympic boxers down through the years, back as far as 64, Jim McCourt from Belfast, I saw Jim McCourt, and lots of the other ones, Huey Russell, 1980. Then the much later, more recent ones with Katie Taylor, Paddy Barnes, Michael Conlon, John Joe Nevin, Darren Sutherland, Kenny Egan, Paddy, all those people. The 56 people, there was a gang of them in the 1 year. Gilroy, Caldwell, Soxbourne, and Fred Teeth got a silver. Michael Cruz, Wayne McCullough on the one day, a silver and a gold. So that's why I would go for Michael. I think they've been so scarce gold medals for us in the Olympic Games. Kevin Morden, why would I go for Kevin? Extraordinary career. Again, I knew Kevin when he was young, playing with Rangers in Bushy Park. I was managing schoolboy teams against Rangers, and I saw this talented player, centre back, he playing in a great team. I remember the manager of the team, Noel Quinn, lovely man. But Kevin had this extraordinary career, and I saw him playing for Good Counsel, which was my local team down on Galtymore Road in Drimnagh. I knew he was handy at the Gaelic because at school level for Drimnagh Castle, They would have been a very strong Gaelic school, as the school I went to, James Street in James Street in Dublin's Liberties. But I was very aware of Kevin as a Gaelic player and a soccer player. But to do what he did, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to repeat what Kevin Moore did in terms of playing, 71 matches, 71 caps for Ireland. He went to 2 World Cups. He played for Manchester United. He played about 450 games at the top level of soccer for Manchester United, Blackburn Rovers, Sporting Gijón. As I said, 71 caps for Ireland, 2 All-Ireland medals for the Dubs. And he was part of that glorious era of the Dubs, those Kerry-Dublin battles. And I remember him coming home one time and playing in one of the matches when he was a Manchester United player, playing in the semi-final, I think in around the 77 period. And Alex Ferguson going to match couldn't believe what he was seeing, because Alex Ferguson was his last manager at Manchester United. But just an extraordinary career. And I think John Giles, I don't think I need to expand too much on John's career. People are probably very familiar with it now, and it is more his recent part in Irish sport and Irish football and Irish media. But, I go back to when he was playing for Leeds United back in the period 65. From that on, after he left Manchester United with a cup medal. And then he was the player we could go and see playing for Ireland. Not too often, there wasn't many internationals those days. But he was a brilliant player. Great player with a top team for years and years and years. And then his career continued as a player manager. Eventually came home and played in Ireland, played for Shamrock Rovers, player manager at West Brom. And he hugely influential person on Irish football in terms of inspiring other people to play the game and in showing people how to play the game as he played it himself, and then as an analyst of the game, as he's been for so many years, a supreme analyst and an analyst with a great mind of the game, and very principled on how the game should be played too.
Yeah.
So they're sections. I mean, there's loads of other people. I'll maybe discuss them after when John talks or whatever. But I mean, they were fine line decisions on a huge number of people. But I had to come down to those 4. Some of them are personal reasons, some of them geographic reasons, some are because I like the idea of a spread of sports, because my life has been about love of sport and different sports and the joy of us, Ireland having winners, Dublin having winners.
No, 100%. And I get that it's an unbelievably difficult decision to make. I wondered if maybe Damien Duff or Robbie Keane, because of your own personal connection with them and the success that they had at underage level, and then also the stratospheric successes they had where they reached world-class level, if they might have made your mountain. I presume they're pretty close to it.
Of course, look, I had to weigh up on the football side of it, the qualities and the careers of, Paul Mcgrath, another lad that lives close by, live in Keeper Road in Drimnagh. Robbie, 67 goals in 143 matches for Ireland. Damien, the fact that I was personally involved with them kind of ruled them out for me, because I can't be objective in my evaluation of them, I would say. And you might say, well, hold on, but your mate Eamon Coughlin's on it. But that was different. I wasn't involved in the athletics. I was only involved in athletics, for that period up until I was about 15. I had to make it, though I ran for the school until I was 17, but I wasn't directly involved in it. Paul Mcgrath, Liam Brady, Liam Brady's such an extraordinary career. Going from Arsenal to Juventus and being a top notch in the Italian football, winning leagues with Juventus. One of the really truly great players of European football. So they're difficult calls on the football side for me. But I just think in the longevity of John Joy's career, I mean, John still played for Shamrock Rovers when he was 40, but memory serves him right, he was still playing for Ireland when he was 36, 37. And he was the main man, he was the main player. He controlled the game, he had a vision of how the game should be played, but he made the other players play to the way he wanted the game played, and they seemed to gain confidence of him. He controlled the tempo of international football when we hadn't got a lot of brilliant players. But, you know, I was to pick on a couple of games, and they're easy ones, the Don Givens games, as I call them, the 3-0 over Russia and the 4-0 over Turkey in a short period of time, and Don scored all the goals. And how, with Liam then coming into the team as a young man, how they controlled the tempo of international football and the style of it, and it was exciting, and it was a lovely game. And I was mature enough at that stage to be able to assess it and to analyse it and say, will it get better than this as an Irish football supporter? I mean, I know we had glory afterwards, we World Cups, and it's a time now for looking back on Jack Charlton's career. But the football really touched the brilliance of that time when Giles was at his best as a mature player, surrounded by a few very decent other players.
John Duggan, I don't envy your choice, because that's
I don't either at this stage.
That's a pretty good mountain.
We might have Brian on Three Rock, and I'll be up to Braddon with a different mountain. I went to bed last night really kind of confident that I'm really secure in my 4 choices here, and none of the 4 choices that Brian made are the 4 choices that I've made. So I don't know how we're going to square this off in any way. Maybe 2 and 2, or just look. Maybe Ger and Owen, you'll decide as neutral observers in the Stokes Kennedy Crowley way.
Let's start with your football, okay? Because we've just heard
Gaelic football or soccer.
Soccer.
Paul Mcgrath is my choice. When I'm looking for my own criteria for a Mount Rushmore, and this is why this is such a brilliant concept, because it's completely subjective. I'm looking for a bit of magic, a bit of legend, a bit of stardust, a bit of the intangible, and I was also looking for different sports to represent the interest that Dublin people have in all sports in the county. And Paul Mcgrath, for me, I think the reason why I picked him is the triumph through adversity. The fact that he grew up in orphanages, he encountered racism. He had a very, very tough upbringing, Paul Mcgrath, really tough upbringing. Vincent Hogan chronicles it beautifully in Back from the Brink. I was reading it last night, and it's such a harrowing time that Paul had growing up in Dublin, and living in orphanages around Dunleary, and to be able to then make the progression from, Dalkey United with Billy Behan, charting his progress. Then he spent a tough time in Brendan's, got out of that, went to Pats, and then went over to Manchester United. And to be able to come through that, and obviously the battle with alcohol that he had through his life, to be the FA Cup final man of the match in 1985, and then I think was our best player in the 1990 World Cup. He was International Player of the Year in that year, 1990. Jack got the best out of him, and then we all know about the Giants Stadium, 83 caps for Ireland, PFA Player of the Year. They've got the God shirts at Aston Villa. That was not insignificant achievement at the time when Manchester United were winning the Premier League. Like for Paul Mcgrath, only Liam Brady and Roy Keane were the fellow PFA Players of the Year. He was on the Team of the Year twice. And I just think Paul Mcgrath, the way he battled through the adversity that he had to overcome, makes him the choice on my football mountain, one of the 4 choices. I completely understand why Johnny Giles would be on Brian's 4, because Johnny is the godfather of the game in the country, not only the capital and the county, like Leeds, Man United, Republic of Ireland manager and player, all those years in the RT studio. Robbie Keane, record caps, record goals. Damien Duff, Richard Dunn, David O'Leary, Frank Stapleton. Liam Brady going over to Juventus and winning the Scudetto twice. Yeah, like with the winning penalty in 81 after being PFA Player of the Year with Arsenal. There's so many of them. You could have actually a Mount Rushmore for football players, but I've gone for Paul because I just think Paul came through all of the tough times that he had and has become a legend, I think, and that's why he's on my mountain.
I can't in any way. Paul McGrath is my favourite footballer, so I'm behind that selection. Brian, there's a generation of listeners and watchers this morning who are like, how good was Paul McGrath? Like, they don't really have that much to compare him to because they haven't seen him in modern times. Like, Is Virgil van Dijk the nearest?
Yeah, I think his style, it's a great choice by John. There's no dispute. Again, Paul is one that I feel close to because geographically he lived in Drimna, his mum lived in Drimna, and of course he played for St. Pat's, So I didn't see a lot of him playing at Pat's at the time. I was involved with Shelbourne, managing the B team, but I was aware of him because I saw him playing for Dalkey. I actually managed a team against him one Sunday morning. I was player manager at CYM in Terranure, and he was playing against our second team, and I couldn't believe it when I saw him in this match. The match finished up with 3-3 draw. It was quite an insignificant fixture in the Leinster Senior League history, but for me it was significant because I saw this elegant, beautifully balanced athlete playing in the middle of the field in a very low level football, and I'm going, what is he doing playing at this level? Unfortunately enough, with another match I saw him later in the season, represented the match, Charlie Walker of St. Pat's was there, manager at the time, Lord rest Charlie, great guy, great character. He signed Paul the next day after that final of the wasn't the Oscar Traynor Trophy? I think it was the Oscar Traynor Trophy. Anyway, he signed Paul, and from there it went on. And Billy Behan mentioned again. Billy Behan was the scout that signed Kevin Morgan, one of my choices. He was probably around at the time of John Giles too. But Paul, you asked me who was he closest to in style. I would say, he was a bit of Mark Lawrenson, Alan Hansen, Virgil van Dijk of the current Premier League centre halves. Anticipation, reading of the game, calmness under pressure. Incredibly, seemed to be able to do it without training very much. That's what always seems to come across when you hear Paul talking about his time or other players that played with him. It's about he didn't seem to train very much. He went in and did a little bit in the gym every day. And various managers, Alex Ferguson probably didn't put up with it, but in his time at Aston Villa,
Graham Taylor was the one who saved him.
Yeah, but they allowed him to have his own type of regime, which probably wouldn't go down well with the newfangled modern game and the influence of this strength and conditioning coaches and so on. But he just went out and did it with the minimum amount of training. He was able to put on these incredible performances, be it international level or club level. So, and for all the reasons John talked about, his background and his life. I had the pleasure of managing one of his sons with one of the underage teams. Christopher played for me, and he was almost an exact replica of his father in terms of style and shape and movements and so on. But he just hadn't got the brilliance that his father had. And maybe it was hard for him to live up to the incredible career of his father, which is often the case. Yeah,
of course. Okay, so you only have one soccer football selection, John, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
So let's do a golf conversation next, because where this fits in, where your selection fits in versus the chairman of the board, I think is going to be an interesting discussion. But go on, who have you got?
Padraig Harrington was not the most talented golfer in the country by any means, but Padraig Harrington, he's my favourite sports person of all time in this country, and obviously he's from South Dublin, around the Rathfarnham area, the son of a Gaelic football player. Opened and closed driving ranges, was the hardest working, most resilient, most tough animal out there. And to win 3 major championships in 13 months. We got great golf courses in this country, but we never really had, we'd like Ryder Cup moments, Christy O'Connor, Eamon Darcy, Philip Walton. We got like Christy O'Connor Senior was a great player, never won a major. But apart from Fred Daly, 1947 to 2007, we'd never won a major. Padraig Harrington, I think, was the guy who, like Jack Charlton with soccer, put Ireland on the map with golf. We had all these tournaments coming over the last 20 years. In Mount Juliet, you had the Ryder Cup at the K Club. But Padraig Harrington winning that first Open Championship, I think, opened the door for Graham McDowell, for Darren Clarke, for Rory McIlroy, for Shane Lowry. And Padraig Harrington did not have the talent, I would say, of Darren Clarke, or even some of the other amateurs he was playing against. But through sheer will, through deconstructing his swing with Bob Torrance, through finishing second 29 times, Padraig Harrington willed himself to the top of the game. Beat a field including Tiger Woods in 2007 at the Open. Tiger Woods was won the PGA the following month and was second in the other two majors. This is a global game played from the likes of Fiji to Argentina to America, where it's huge, golf is huge. And to win 3 major championships in 13 months, 3 more than Lee Westwood, who was world number 1, 3 more than Luke Donald, who was world number 1, 3 more than Colin Montgomery, 2 more than David Duval, 2 more than Justin Rose, as many as Vijay Singh, to win the Open like he did at Carnoustie, to win it by 4 shots the following year with that incredible 5-1 on the 17th, and to whip the field. And then the following month, a European had not won the PGA Championship in America since 1930, since Tommy Armour, and to face down Garcia the way he did with 2 66s and that snaking putt, this guy for me was just representing Ireland on the global stage and winning. And that's why, for me, Padraig Harrington is right up there and is on my mountain.
It's really hard to compare and contrast one sport's achievements with another. Like, when you think back to Eamon Coughlin, like, that was middle distance running in America. It was kind of before sprinting had become America's favourite athletics sport. It was the main thrust of it, and Coughlin was like the sexiest and the most high profile and the coolest in America. And here we have Harrington facing down Tiger Woods. It's I can see why these are difficult choices, Brian.
Yeah, look, again, I had a sub list, and Padraig Harrington was top of it. I also had written down Christy O'Connor Jr. because I remember as a young lad following Christy O'Connor's career very closely. He was always up there in the top 10 of the tour events. I don't even know they were called the tour events at that time, but I'd be watching the results every week. There wasn't the coverage on TV that there is now, where you can watch every stroke, every hole in the big events almost every weekend. But Christy O'Connor Senior, Christy O'Connor Junior, and like Padraig's achievements are wonderful. That short period John talked about when he won the 3 majors, and he's had always been there and thereabouts for so long. And I've massive member. I suppose the fact that I never played it kind of goes against golf a little bit for me. Although I watch it regularly, I find it's great for watching golf on a late on a Sunday night, because you can get away with reading the paper at the same time. You can actually, I can find that I can watch a match and watch golf on 2 different stations. I can watch a match and then...
Some living room, Brian. Some living room.
I can switch over to golf, and I can usually judge how long it takes for the player I'm watching, whether it be Padraig Harrington or Rory McIlroy or Paul McGinley or any of Shane Lowry. Any of the Irish players are playing, I want to watch them. But I know it's going to take roughly 10 minutes for the next shot after they've had the previous shot. So I can flash over and watch a little bit of the league during that period, because I'm not that interested in the other guys. I want them to fail. So I've enjoyed watching Padraig being brilliant and his brilliant self. I've been lucky enough to sit beside him at a couple of events, and he's a fantastic guy and a massively a lovely representation of Dublinness and Irishness.
This is true. Again, Harrington, I think, is on a lot of people's lists here. Brianna Driscoll next.
Yeah, Brianna Driscoll. When I was growing up, rugby was an amateur sport. We'd only beat Wales in Cardiff, and that's the only thing we do. We get whipped. This was after the Nick Doyle era, when we had a couple of Triple Crowns. But the game turned professional, and for me, the symbol of Ireland's progression during that transition from amateur to professional rugby, which is very popular in the capital, is Brianna Driscoll. The start, the lighting the touch paper of that is the game in France, 28 years without a win there, a hat-trick of tries. That's how great people announce themselves on stages, and that's what Brian did. And I'm thinking then all through the years, what the statistics on it, 46 tries and 133 appearances. I wasn't, surprised when I thought about it years later what they did to him as Lions captain in 2005 when he was playing in New Zealand. Should have won the World Player of the Year in 2009. It was a travesty that Richie McCaw got it, because that year Brianna Driscoll carried Ireland in the Six Nations, and easy to forget that it was 61 years since we'd won a Grand Slam, and we won the Grand Slam, and he scored a try in every game but one. And he changed his game. He was a flair player at the beginning, but then he became much physically stronger. and very brave. Brianna Driscoll, very, very brave player. And I know there's a lot of romance around Munster and winning the European Cups and the journey they were on in 06 and 08 and all that kind of stuff. And that's great. But Leinster also won 3 European championships. And Leinster are the preeminent, they're the premier club team in Europe at the moment. And I think a lot of that's got to do with the likes of Brianna Driscoll. 09, 11, 12, European champion. And there's so many great players around him. You've got to give an honourable mention to Johnny Sexton as well from a rugby perspective. I'm not a rugby guy. When I came out of the womb, there was no rugby ball in my hand. I went to Gaelic games, Christian Brothers School. But I got to hold up my hands and say that Brianna Driscoll is a global superstar, one of our greatest ever rugby players from the capital, grew up, I believe, in his early stages in Clontarf, went to Blackrock College. And I just think he was a golden player of a golden generation. Okay, we didn't win a World Cup under him, but the 09 Six Nations, the Grand Slam winning year, even when he went to France in 14 when we won that final Six Nations championship, he was going that long, and record try score in the Six Nations, all of the things that he just has, that magic and that sparkle, Brianna Driscoll, that puts him on my mountain.
Look, I think we take him for granted because he's been around for so long. But like, we did Classic Game Club recently where we look back at that game in Paris and they were like, oh, this guy, is he all that good? That was the kind of pre-match. And we're not sure about his defence, and then obviously his defence becomes one of his hallmarks. But the hat-trick that day, like, it's hard to overstate the importance that suddenly having somebody who comes in and gives a team confidence does to the whole culture. And then the way that he drove standards from that point forward as well, and is part of that wave of professionalism that actually fixes Irish rugby and a lot of the problems it had. So, Brian, I don't know what you think of this one.
Yeah, look, you know, my sub list, Padraig Harrington and Brian O'Driscoll were very high up on that. I had to debate it long and hard. And look, you can see the trend. I would have predicted John's first 3 before he said them. Okay, based on I have a feeling for how John thinks about people and different sports, but also it's an era thing as well. I mean, my choice is the most recent one who was active in sport was probably, like, Eamon was still running until the 90s and he's still running now, but Michael Carruth was still boxing in the late 90s. Kevin Morden the same, but they're all a bit, you know, their era is past, whereas John is picking people who are much more current, and that's related to his age as well, where I'm kind of, I don't want the past to be disrespected when we talk about heroes because of the media coverage in nowadays, or in the last 10 or 20 years of sport. I think sometimes people have forgotten their achievements of the past can easily be forgotten because there isn't the same amount of old classic material to look back at. I mean, Eamon Coughlin says not that much about his stuff in America, although he used to be on Saturday Sport every Saturday afternoon. Michael Carruth, yes, the Olympics is every 4 years. We enjoy the Olympics and we win medals in boxing, and everyone's interested in time. Then it just dies off and people forget about how difficult it was for him to beat the Cuban and in the final. But also he beat a brilliant German boxer and a Thai boxer along the way. Right? But so, Brian O'Driscoll, absolutely magical player. I was at a good few games when I saw his brilliance. I mean, particularly was it 2005, the English game when the Crow Park match is referred to, and he was absolutely fantastic that day. His strength as well as his agility, his ability to, I'd say, winkle his way in over the try line, where his frame didn't look huge. He didn't look like this. Didn't look like one of the prop forwards going for the line, but he seemed to have that ability to get there, despite the fact there was a gang of English fellas trying to hold up the line. And his evasiveness running with the ball and time, just a brilliant player. And again, he's someone who lasted for so long. He's captain of the Irish team for about 9 years, I think, in the Irish team for 15 years. He's just a great player. So I don't have any dispute with John's choices at all. I just that mine are from a slightly different era and then different sports. So far, John, you know, he's gone soccer, if you want to call it soccer, golf and rugby, whereas I've left out golf and rugby. and I've gone for. We wait. We see what John comes up with. We've gone with football, and we've not.
Kevin Moran's a bit of both, isn't he?
We've only agreed on football so far as a choice.
Is Kevin Moran a GAA choice for you, or is he a football choice?
Whatever you have in yourself.
There you go.
John is going to pick a Dublin person, a Dublin footballer, I'd say now. Well, I'm just guessing on that one. But I would say that Dublin football people of a certain vintage would remember that era as Dublin people remember this era, and the Jim Gavin and what's going on now with Stephen Cluxton and the great current players and brogans of the current teams, right? But of a previous era, of that 70s era, and that time, people will remember Kevin Moran and Brian Mullins. That time, Paddy Cullen. That people remember that. But then the football, like I know blokes who have no interest in Gaelic games. They only interest in soccer, right? And they would remember Kevin Moran as being their solid, sound Manchester United player. Right, then goes to Blackburn Rovers, who are in the second division, helps them to get promoted, and they finished third and second in 2 years. And then Kevin was nearly finished. He's 33, 34 at the time. Actually more, he's 36, 37. And Blackburn Rovers almost won the league. Actually won the next league the next year after he had retired. But, his All-Ireland wins are just... the All-Ireland wins 76-77, 2 All-Irelands. Dublin beat Kerry, Dublin beat Armagh, 5-23. I can see Kevin striding down the middle of the pitch, soloing the ball, hopping the ball, soloing the ball, driving towards the goal.
Yeah.
Knock a ball. And then to do it in Wembley Stadium, he got put off for the tackle. It was only half a tackle on Peter Reid. But to play for Manchester United for years and years, it's just extraordinary. Anyway, look, with John and myself, we'd never fight about it, but we might disagree on the fine lines. Go for it, John.
It's Royal Rover stuff. Yeah. Go on, who's your last?
Well, as Brian kind of correctly predicted with generational thing, is Jim Gavin. Now, somebody said to me yesterday on Twitter, John Brennan, the journalist, says, make sure Kevin Heffernan's on there. And I can understand why Kevin...
He's on my list. I have Kevin Heffernan on my second list. Yeah. That's only, Jimmy Keaveney, people like that. Because again, I was part of Heffo's army. I was there. I was on the hill for Heffo's army when that restarted. With the after a long time. I was at 68 before that. And I was at the 68 one, 63, 68, 58. I was at the 58 one when they beat 30. Now I was in the pram, mind you, but I was at it. He told me about it. But so I was part of the Heffo's army in the early 70s.
Yeah, it is generational. For me, it's about bawling my eyes out as a 9-year-old on Killiney Hill when Charlie Redmond misses the penalty against Meath in 1988, and being reared on that golden years, that Kerry the movie that I'm sure Owen Jean's got about 100 copies of in his loft. For me, Dublin, when I was approaching 33 years of age, had only won 2 All-Irelands. They were inferior to Kerry. Kerry are the aristocrats of Gaelic football. Meath as well had Dublin's number. In the 80s and early 90s. John Boylan won 4 All-Irelands. Dublin had only won 2 in 83 and 95 in my lifetime before the Cluxton moment in 2011. But for me, Jim Gavin, and I kind of fell out of love with Dublin football and Gaelic football. I was like an obsessive Dublin Gaelic football fan. I was bawling my eyes out. I couldn't take it anymore after the down 1994 final. Couldn't take the losses. Was weak, was brittle about my support. They won it the following year, but that was really the end of an era in a way for Dublin football, and they didn't win another Leinster title for 7 years. But what Jim Gavin, what he engineered with the Dublin footballers for me, maybe they have advantages in regards to population and money and all these kind of things, but they still had to do it. And to win 6 All-Irelands, to win 36 games unbeaten between March 2015 April 2017, to win 44 championship matches out of 48, only 1 defeat. To win 6 All-Irelands, 7 Leinsters, 5 National Leagues, to have 49 All-Stars out of your team. Every single time the dam was about to burst with Dublin under Jim Gavin, it never did. Mayo 2017, Mayo had the game. Dam didn't burst. Dean Rock puts over the free. Kerry played brilliant football against Dublin. 2013, 2016 semi-finals, 2019 last year's final when Dublin had Johnny Cooper sent off. Dublin still were finishing the games like trains. Every single time. There was no sentiment with certain players like Bernard Brogan, that kind of thing in recent times. And for me, Jim Gavin was the mastermind behind all of that, a bit like Cody and Kilkenny. But Cody's Kilkenny never did 5, Migo's Kerry never did 5, and for Dublin to win 5 All-Irelands in a row, never achieved in the 130-year history of Gaelic Athletic Association, for me, puts Jim Gavin, who in a Kaiser Soze way, dropped the microphone and then just left. For me, he's on my mountain. I just think Jim has broken Kerry's...
knocked them off their effing perch, is the phrase you're looking for. That's the way. That's a better articulated way of saying it. Dublin now, you cannot take away the record that Dublin have won 5 All-Irelands in a row and Kerry haven't. But, and we have to pick nits because it is Mount Rushmore. He's not on the field of play. Cluxton is on the field of play. Cluxton is like living this. He's the one who's in the training session setting the standards. Like, why did you go for the manager instead of any of the players who actually affected it on the field of play?
Well, Jim did win it in 95 as well. He was a player in 95. I went for Jim because nobody's done it before as a manager. Migo couldn't do it. Cody couldn't do it. Peter Caffrey, Tommy Lyons, they all had good resources. They couldn't do it.
Pat Gilroy did it, and Jim Gavin comes after that.
Pat Gilroy was only one of 4 years he got to the final in the 4 years he was in charge.
Yeah, okay. I kind of feel like Gavin comes off the back of the Dublin team. It's like the point you made earlier on about Brianna Driscoll. That was the end of a famine. Gilroy ended a famine, and then there's the benefit of all those players having that confidence. I'm in two minds about this because I also feel like Cluxton being on kind of negates the quality of the player that he was kicking the ball out to. So he had Paul Flynn running lines that were like a wide receiver in American football, where he would set off and he would arrive and the ball would be there in his hands, but that would be because he had made the perfect run. So that's kind of arguing against myself here, but I wonder if we sometimes give the manager a little bit too much credit when things go well and too much blame when things don't go well, and actually ultimately they prepare the team but the team delivers. Brian, you were a manager. What do you think?
Well, look, what Jim Gavin has done is extraordinary. I know Jim a little bit, and I actually, he wanted to have some tactical discussions with me in terms that I might be able to help him. And I said, will you go ahead with that? I struggled enough to sort it out for 11 on the pitch. I can't understand this thing with the 15 on the pitch and how you devise such a tactical plan to deal with the opposition and all the influence of the substitutes and so on. I think it's amazing. I think, again, the repeating it year after year, the changing of the squad, the development of the tactics, the style of it, getting over to Donegal one and the Northern team sitting in against them, sitting in their own half and playing on the counter-attack, persisting with the Dublin style of aggressive attacking play and never conceding on that. Now changing it so that they found a tactical way to disrupt that sitting in, or whatever they call it, the everyone back tactic is what I call it.
Blanket defence, yeah.
The blanket, it was even worse than that. There's everyone back in their own half, and Donegal said, kick it up to Michael Murphy, and now we'll start playing. But I thought it was dreadful. I didn't find it easy on the eye, and I was delighted that Dublin found a way to stop that, and that changed the game again. But look, I just think he's a marvellous tactician. He's an incredible guy sitting on the touchline. Looks like the calmest fella. It just looks like he's watching a kids' match. It doesn't matter. And the match is dangling on a point against Mayo. Last kick of the ball. It's just, I find him an extraordinary manager in what he's done and what his teams have done over the last few years. The influence of Cluxton has kind of revolutionised Gaelic a little bit as well. The influence of the goalkeeper, the importance of the kickouts. For all the time that I knew Gaelic football, the kickout was about you kick it and God guides it, and you hope one of your teammates gets it, right? He changed it into the precision kickout, short kickouts or longer kickouts, not into space, but into the space he knows that his man is running to collect that ball and start the attacks. And they've all followed suit. Everyone's at it. So it is an extraordinary time in Gaelic football, and those two, because they've been there the longest. And the manager, I don't accept the one that the players do it and the manager just picks them and puts them out there. He devises the whole. He runs the orchestra. There's a team behind the team, as you know. It's been talked about the resources Dublin have. They have a bus for the staff and a bus for the players. They have so many people. But all those people have to be given direction and their roles have to be defined and refined. And he manipulates all that and the style and the changing of the guard, as John mentioned about, players coming and going, players' time, being told their time is up and just moving on seamlessly. It's incredible. My only, my reservation about the whole Gaelic thing and even the hurling one is they're the All-Ireland champions and they've been All-Ireland champions for 5 years in a row now. But they're not tested against Brazil, or they're not tested against Netherlands, or Italy, or France, or Spain, or New Zealand, or wherever. They're not. It's kind of like it is parochial. It is Irish. It is national. We don't know how good we are because no one else plays the game. I know the GAA have done great work, and there's bits of Gaelic games breaking out all over the world, but not on the same scale. They're not going to be involved in the All-Ireland. So that's my only slight reservation about the whole thing. And even, if I have to switch one of yours, are we going to get to that, John? I don't know where we're going.
Yeah, that's where we're heading next. Yeah,
I like being selfish on my own one. I've picked football. I picked a fella who was Gaelic football, but he was also football. He was international, 71 international caps for Ireland, Kevin Morden. And then I picked a boxer. There's no boxer in John's. Boxing has been part and parcel of Irish sport going back for centuries. But it's been the sport that has given masses of the population the biggest joy, has given masses of people respect within their community. And it's given Ireland people like Barry McGuigan and Bernard Dunn and Steve Collins, who we've all admired their achievements as professional boxers, some of them as amateur boxers, the likes of Mick Dowling and people like that. But I have an admiration for amateur boxing because I think it's pure. There's no manager or promoter can fix who you fight up and who you miss out on, and can you avoid him and I'll get you a world title fight. Amateur boxing, you have to go to the World Championships and prove you're the best. You go to the Olympics, you prove you're the best of the best of the best. In a 4-year cycle, you only get one go at it. This is an extraordinary time. The Olympics will be 2021, be a 5-year cycle. But for that reason, and Irish achievements in boxing, going back to Bob Fitzsimons and people like that, and the fellas that went to America historically back in after the famine and won world titles, we had to have a boxer in there. And Michael Carruth is my Mount Rushmore man for me on his gold medal in 1992.
Okay, so John has picked. And he's picked Paul Mcgrath, Jim Gavin, Pádraig Harrington and Brianna Driscoll. And the way this works is that Brian gets to make a change.
Owen and Ger, what do you think?
I'm definitely on the Brian side of things here, that Michael Carruth is inarguably somebody that needs to be up there as a result of the sport in which he played. I think it's important to have that level of inclusion. I won't throw the cat amongst the pigeons on the Gavin versus Cluxton thing again. I was going to come in there and say I would have been on the Cluxton side of things, because I think he might actually be better remembered than Jim Gavin in 50 years, 100 years. But there's no point getting into that right now. I think the Kevin Moran candidacy is unbelievably strong as a result of the two sports. But I think, is that almost an easy way to include him? If just to be devil's advocate here, is that almost an easy way to include him? Whereas you have Michael Carruth, who was the best in the world at that very point. So I think Brian is absolutely right for him to be the person to come in. So you're asking me, who do you take out of your four? It's because of the fact that I disagree with you on Jim Gavin versus Stephen Cluxton. That is the only person I've got a reservation about in your four. It would have to be him off for Michael Cruz if you had to push me, but it's an impossible task, John.
I'm just a facilitator here, John. So I don't need
Go on
to.
here, Lily-White, Jerry. You know, you've got that Kildare.
I say split it in two, have a north and south, and don't bother with an overarching one. That's pointless here. We all know you've got too many resources. Brian, who are you taking off? That's the $64 million question.
To get Michael onto John's list.
Yes.
I'm sorry, but and as much as I admire his forward, I could have chosen the forward myself if I decided I was going to start in 1990, right? Rather than my current age allows me to start a bit earlier, right? So if I started in 1990, I probably would have picked those four, would I? Maybe not. Maybe, you know, golf and rugby are probably down the line a little bit for me because while rugby is international, it's not that international. It's only international between the few here, the six here, and Italy. Is Italy really one of them? Or are they have they won many matches? I don't think so. But anyway, so we've six here and we've four down in the other parts of the world, and that's it. Whereas some of the other sports, and that's why I probably leave out Brian O'Driscoll because of the lack of teams that they play rugby against. He was a magnificent player, absolutely, you know, bod and God and all that. I just the rugby one. There's not, you know, I want to see a rugby World Cup with 48 teams or 24 teams to have a chance. Not what we had.
Well, you could make the argument
what we had last year when the score lines of many of the matches were up in the 70 and 80 and 90 points.
Just to play devil's advocate for a minute, they've got Japan and the islands who are obviously improving, and they are making some progress there. I think O'Driscoll should be on this list because of the way that he transformed the professional game, and because he's an exemplar, and because of the longevity. Like, if you're taking somebody off, I mean, is Harrington even the best Irish golfer? He's not. Rory McIlroy is better. Like,
but this to me is about the criteria that I use to pick this. First of all, this is Dublin. So it doesn't matter to me if somebody from Portugal or Brazil doesn't know about this. This is about Dublin people, and Dublin people looking at the Dublin Mountain. And Dublin people love Gaelic football. They love rugby for Leinster Rugby. They love seeing someone like Harrington, one of their own. Harrington walk around, like down Rathmichael, walk around the shops, winning 3 major championships. And also for me, the big part of my selections was resilience, game changers like O'Driscoll, game changers like Gavin, who changed the whole culture of Dublin football and put Kerry where they needed to be put.
Roy Keane is the best Irish footballer. He's not from Dublin. I don't think that's a fair argument to use against Patrick Harrington.
Are you saying, I mean, was Roy Keane better than Giles? Or better than Paul Mcgrath?
Harrington got the best out of himself more than any other golfer on this island, and he set the tone and he put Irish golf on the map with those 3 majors. Okay,
so is that your final answer, Brian? It's Michael Carruth and he's replacing Brian O'Driscoll.
Well,
or Harrington or Jim Gavin.
Well, then that would leave John. You know, I think John, the football man has to be in. I think the Gaelic man has to be in because of the Dublin thing. I don't think Brian. I don't think the rugby thing represents all of Dublin necessarily. I mean, John is making the case from Brian O'Driscoll, but it would, like, there wasn't many rugby players where I lived. Now, I mean, I used to go to rugby, but there wasn't, and it doesn't. It has never represented all of Dublin in Ireland. It's a fairly particular area of Dublin that rugby represented.
There's not a lot of boxers in Dalkey either.
Exactly, but there should be. And when the pubs close, there's boxers everywhere. But anyway, there should be. But you know, again, look. Can we not have 2 mountains now?
You're not the first person to ask that question. Unfortunately, we can't. Look, if it's coming down to a choice between O'Driscoll and Harrington, it's a very difficult choice to make. I mean, you're wedded to Carruth, though, yeah? Like, my one caveat with Carruth is that he did turn professional and didn't make it.
Yeah, but as was said there, that at that time, he was the world champion. He was the best in the world. And look, I'm going over old ground here saying that boxing is very important in Irish sport. 4 years' time, we'll be at it again. Is that Kurt Walker going to be able to get us a medal in the Olympia? With Andy Lee, when he went, the lone Irish boxer, we were all hoping he could do it. He wasn't able to do it. It's a very, very tough sport, and its history in Ireland, I think Michael has to be in. Representing himself and Dublin, he's a quintessential Dubliner himself, walking away, still producing potential stars in boxing as a coach. But look, it's such a fine line stuff. I don't have any dispute with John's. And I love all those people. I love Jim Gavin, Brianna Driscoll, Padraig Harrington, Paul Mcgrath. I'd like to think that, I've had little dealings with them and I admire them so much as people. It's an impossible task. I suppose it's an era thing as well. It's an age, generational thing where I've gone from people a little bit further back. And I'm quite happy to accept the jury's vote on this one.
Okay.
Honestly, I'd have no dispute on any of that. On Paul Mcgrath ahead of John Giles. I just give an opinion of a different time because I saw a lot of John Giles playing and I knew his influence on Irish coaching and Irish young Irish coaches who wanted to have a future in the game. And so I'm bringing that to it. And the Kevin Morden one, I wouldn't just dismiss and say, just because he played two sports. He played two sports at the highest level. He went from one to the other and back again. I mean, he's playing for Dublin, and the next season he's playing for Manchester United. I mean, you give me someone now who's going to do that in the next 10 years.
It's never
will do it.
Never going to happen.
It'll never happen again.
No, it was completely moment. So you're making that change, are you? Carruth is going on and O'Driscoll's coming off. Is that it?
Yeah, but don't tell Brian. I like
him. Brian, you've been great. Thanks a million.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks a lot. It's a pleasure. Thanks, lads.
It's Brian Kerr there, making a change that's going to make all our lives very difficult into the future.
At least I put him on.
I'm putting him on too, by the way.
I thought he deserved to be on. But this is the beauty of this. It's completely subjective. There's no right, there's no wrong answer. I don't think it was the Kilkenny situation here where Cody and Shefflin weren't on. It's very difficult. You could have four soccer players. You could have Robbie Keane, Paul Mcgrath, Liam Brady and John Giles on a Dublin. And where there's no right answers.
I'd have Duffer on ahead of Robbie, to be honest, just because of the sheer joy that every time he got the ball, the electrification of the crowd. I just wanted, for the record, Owen Sheehan was not weighing in on behalf of Brian O'Driscoll there. He was absolutely in favour of Harrington and in favour of Michael Carruth. Just for the record, for the next time when you're on and you're interviewing him, no? I just want that.
Brian O'Driscoll would be on my Dublin Mount Rushmore
out there, but you didn't lobby Brian Kerr. When the moment asked you to step up, you step down.
No,
Owen, you don't get the Guinness.
You've got this. Thank you. You've got this weird thing going on, Joe, where you like to actually put your stamp on what Dublin people are doing to their Mount Rushmore or what other people's counties are doing to their Mount Rushmore. I like to leave them to their own devices. My Harrington point was about the point you made because you tried to lead the witness, as I say, and I'm not having that.
Fair enough. 0879 180 180. And sorry, you're saying it's Tibradden. Where is Tibradden?
It's in the Dublin Mountains. It's one of these. Look at a few mountains. You got Three Rock. You got Ferry Castle. I was looking actually these up last night. I think there's one called Capure, but I believe that's might be in Wicklow. So I don't really know much about them, but you can't really have them on Bull Island, so we'll have to put them on the Dublin. With the chisel, we'll have to put them on the Dublin Mountains. It is Carruth, it is Jim Gavin, it is Paul Mcgrath, and it's Padraig Harrington.
I think you put it on the Sugarloaf, like just as a, colonial zeal.
It's taking this over. This is an incursion into Wicklow. This is a coup. We're rolling in the tanks.
It's Iraq into Kuwait circa August 1990.
Yeah, something like that.
It should be four heads moulded out of clay beside the Luke Kelly statue that constantly gets vandalised.
Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. Owen, a question for you about the Jim Gavin versus Cluxton thing, because I'm. Which of these do you fear most as a Kerry man?
Cluxton, obviously. Cluxton is the man who should have been on it for me. He is the man who executed. He's the man who's been there longer. He's the man who won the All-Ireland in 2011, literally kicked the ball over the wire to win the All-Ireland in 2011. The most iconic moment in modern Dublin GAA history. And he is the man who was central to winning the 5 in a row. His fingertips stopped Kerry last year, and his boots also stopped Kerry last year. And every year before that, Mayo people can attest to that same fact. He is the best GAA player Dublin have ever produced, and they've as John rightly said, the achievement meant that somebody from that team needed to be on that mountain. But for me, I'm heavily in favour of Cluxton on this.
Dublin's Mount Rushmore, and Mount Rushmore is in the books. The end.
OTB AM's Mount Rushmore.